Welcome, everybody, back to the Perez Performance Podcast. My name is Tyler Perez. I am your host. Today, we have a very special guest. I'm going to get right into it. Another member of the Run Club. We're running it back-to-back episodes. My guy, Ben Racke. Ben, what's up, dude?
What's up, man? Thanks for having me. Really appreciate you having me on. I'm your second guest or third guest?
Second guest. We don't count the
Wow,
prelude
dude.
episode.
Well, I'm honored to be on your podcast, man. As you rep the shirt too, looking jacked.
Shout out Hypertrophy Clusters for getting me jacked. Shout out Ben Racke Fitness and Performance for the
I love it,
shirt.
man.
We love it.
Looks great. No, seriously, appreciate you having me on, man.
Yeah, man. Before we get into your background, I mean, obviously, I'll kind of give a little insight. So Ben and I, we started to really get to know each other probably about a year ago at this time. I think we first connected when we both, I think, signed up for the Coach 'em Up conference down in Austin. Once kind of everybody started signing up for stuff, Tim and Zach started kind of just showing everybody like who signed up, all that. And I think everybody kind of had the same idea, trying to connect with whoever was going down beforehand. And I saw all different coaches and I saw Ben's stuff and I was like, oh, I'm going to give him a follow. So we kind of knew each other on social media for a little bit. And then we finally got a chance to meet in person down in Austin. And Ben became one of my favorite people of all time. One, because he's just an absolute stud. He's an amazing coach. He's become an amazing friend. The other reason is I still dream about those Black Angus Lavaca tacos that you talked about, that you did recommend. But those are still in my mind and in my heart. I feel like I just need to go back and get them.
Well, and that's totally Tim. We left. Jeez. So I got down there and I had hit Tim up and I was just asking him like what was going on, and because I got down there a little early. And he was just like, hey, we're going to this track at this time. And I was like, bet. So, like, I got to meet Tim finally in person, Dan Bach finally in person. I met Blaine in person. I met Dylan Shannon in person as well. And Dylan and I were staying, like, in a close vicinity as far as, like, hotels. So after we got done sprinting at the track that day, Dylan and I wanted to eat. So I was like, hey, like, where should we go, Tim? And he was like, oh, I'll go to, that place is called Lavaca, I think?
Yeah.
Or something along those lines. And he was like, order the blackened ribeye tacos. And I was like, bro, like I mean, for me, that's like heaven. I'm a ribeye guy. Like that's my cut of steak anyway. So, and then I'm also a huge fan of like blackened stuff or like Cajun stuff or things like that. So it was just like, it was honestly like one of the best meals that I've had in a really, really long time. That's like kind of I would say those tacos specifically would probably be like a death row meal for me. Like that would be one of the things that I'd want before they like, you know, do the firing squad or whatever, like if I'm on death row. But yeah.
Yeah.
But
100% agree with that.
so shout out to Tim. Yeah, it was Tim's.
Yeah.
That was Tim's idea. It wasn't. I put you on because Tim put me on and Dylan on. So yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway.
It was great to meet all those guys. But all right, I'm getting hungry again. Enough about tacos. I just had lunch. I don't need to eat anymore today. So Ben, for everybody who is tuning in, listening, could you be able to kind of just introduce yourself, who you are, kind of what you're up to, and essentially your journey from when you started out to get to the place you are now?
Okay. So I started off as more of a personal trainer in the just general fitness space. I've been training adults and athletes for 10 years. I think this year will be 11 years. So I started working with adults at an Anytime Fitness, just doing like, I don't know. I can't remember how exactly their model worked, but it was larger group. So it was like 10, 15 adults at a time, kind of like a wide range of different adults. There were some adults who were more, I guess I would say, maybe some that had like an athletic background. And then there were just like some like older, elderly folks in there as well. Folks that were more, I would say weight loss, fat loss, body composition oriented. People that like for their health needed to lose body fat. So some overweight folks. Some of the folks were again like more, I say athletic or like former athletes, and they just wanted to, you know, look better, feel better, function better, that type of thing. I was probably there for, I don't know, 6 or 8 months. And then I was going to college with a girl who knew a guy who was like on the cover of a bunch of muscle and fitness magazines, and he was kind of in the, I would say, like the physique realm. So, and I guess to back up a little bit, I was a college football player. We had a coaching change, and I fell in love with like the athletic preparation part. Like my favorite part of like the of college football was became the weight room and like the off season stuff and the like waking up and being at the gym at 6 in the morning. And our head coach, before our coaching change, like he was all about it too. Like, so we would walk in there and he'd be like getting after it at 4. No, he'd start at probably 4:30 or 5 in the morning. We'd walk in there and he's like getting after it. It's like this guy's in his mid 50s or whatever and has kids and like is our head football coach. If he's getting after it, like we don't have an excuse, you know what I mean? So like ACDC's blaring as we go into the gym, and he's in there just ripping it, man. So I don't know. We had the off season culture at Thomas More College at the time was just really cool, and honestly, like a lot of kids that I grew up with and friends that I made even at Thomas More, that were from other areas and stuff, just guys that liked to lift weights, man. Guys that like to lift weights, guys that wanted to like, be jacked, be strong, get faster, be more athletic. So it was just that environment, that really changed me. So I was an offensive lineman. I was like probably 275 or 280 when I got to Thomas More. I started getting more into like just training. I lost some body fat and lost some weight and felt better about myself. And, anyway, long story short, that got me into training, really into training. And I started training when I was like 13 for football in high school. I didn't really fall in love with the weight room until I was probably a sophomore in college. But yeah, so long story short, we had a coaching change and I just wasn't like having fun playing football anymore. I just wanted to, the only thing I was thinking about like at football practice was like the lift I was going to do after football practice. So I'm just like, that's not really like a good place to be, like if you're on a football team and like you're not really bought in. So I was just like, I don't want to play football anymore. I'd played since I was 5 years old. It's just not, it wasn't something that I wanted to continue to do. Also, I was like, I want to start learning about becoming a trainer and like actually, helping other people, make progress with their fitness and their health. Anyway, the anytime fitness situation or a job opportunity came up. I took that job, and then I was going to college with a girl who knew the guy from the muscle and fitness magazines and bodybuilding kind of background. And again, at this time, like I am doing kind of a lot of just meathead stuff, like bodybuilding stuff, maybe dabbling into, like, I say power lift, just like doing the power lift, squat, bench, and deadlift. Those are like parts of that's part of like, a strength training program anyway. So like I had been doing those things, specifically like the power Olympic lift variations, power snatch, power clean, hang power snatch, like those kinds of things were always parts of our program as well. So I had experience with those kinds of things and I'd mess around with that kind of stuff, but mostly just trying to like be a meathead and be a bodybuilder or be a wannabe bodybuilder. But also I was playing basketball, pick up basketball multiple times a week. But I'm all over the place here. So the girl I went to school with, she hooked me up with the guy who owned a gym in a little bit north of where I lived, where my parents lived. And he kind of had a name in the personal training space, I guess you would say. Lots of pictures like on his social media with like pro athletes and stuff that would come through. And yeah, so she told me he was hiring, and so I went down there and I got the job right away and was there for almost a year. In that year time, realized that like this person was not the greatest human being. We'll just put it that way. Not good for business, not good for relationships. A lot of really bad stuff. So yeah, and after that I started my own LC and quickly found out that I had moved out of my parents' house because I was doing all right as a personal trainer and I was finishing up school, but like quickly found out that it's hard out there being a being a personal trainer and not having a big book of clients and not getting clients like handed to you, right? Like where when you're working for someone and they have a little bit of a name, like, and you're working under them, like I was kind of working all the time, and I went from having kind of a full book to like not having a full book and being very broke. Yeah, I mean, more than anything, I guess the the next 5 to 8 years, I just stayed kind of consistent with training people and trying to over deliver, from the perspective of just meeting people where they're at, and learning a lot on the fly. And yeah, rented space from some places and got an opportunity to work at a performance facility in Florida, and took that opportunity. Again, my wife and I found out we were having Ollie, so yeah, decided to there's a lot that happened, obviously, like the pandemic and navigating that, like being in a good situation. And then we had just had Layla, and I'm waking up in the morning and doing virtual sessions like this from my car, like in my little garage. So I didn't wake her up, and then, like I said, I took the opportunity in Florida. Just great opportunity, met a lot of great people, still have some clients that I work with today. I'm like kind of disingenuous stuff going on that, like, I didn't want to be a part of anymore, quite honestly. Yeah, moved back here, rented space for a couple years, and decided that it was finally time to like open my own space. And the guy I was renting space from was kind of like, hey, love you, but like you're taking up a lot of my space. And like he encouraged further into like training and strength and conditioning. I don't necessarily want to be a gym owner. Like I own this space, but like I want to be a trainer and a strength coach. I don't want to necessarily like sit behind a desk all day and manage other trainers. And no, I want to like actually do the thing. So my idea was we were gonna build a house, and I was gonna coach people from the basement. My wife and I just had more conversations, and it was more like a situation where it's like, do we really want random people coming in and out of the house? And then it's also like that conversation too of like parking and HOAs and like that kind of stuff gets a little tricky with like running a business from homes. Um, leasing a space in the Midwest isn't crazy expensive. Yeah, found a good space, made some investments in equipment and the flooring and stuff. And yeah, here we are, man. 10 years later, still coaching, still doing the thing. Yeah, I guess that was a really long-winded way of telling you my story, but yeah.
No, dude, appreciate it. So you definitely had a lot of reps. I think, just listening to the story, you've had a lot of reps, a lot of different fields essentially, or a lot of different focal
Mhm.
points. You had the people who we're just there kind of going through and we're just like, yeah, I want to be toned or whatever. Like having some of those clients, obviously, yourself doing a little bit of like the bodybuilding, you've worked with some really good coaches, you worked with some not so great coaches, and now you're kind of your own boss. And I think in the private sector, that's kind of where everybody wants to get at some point is that, you're working for yourself. So, dude, you have definitely been through the reps. And you were D3 for football, right?
Yeah, I played at the University of Dayton for a semester. That's a whole story too in and of itself. I committed to play at the University of Butler. Then I transferred to Thomas More, small Division III school in Northern Kentucky, and yeah, it was the best decision ever. It was awesome. That for my first year there, I was a backup to a guy who was like, I believe Jake was a 4-year letter winner, if I'm not mistaken. I think he started as a true freshman at right tackle. Just a stud of a guy and a hell of a human being. But he th- that year of football for me, again, the football was fun, don't get me wrong, the off season was amazing, but that season of football, even as a backup, was like one of the most fun football seasons I've ever had. Like the road trips, the friends I made.
Yeah, man. That's awesome. I absolutely love that. So shout out D3 because I know last episode, Matt too, he was D3. I played D3. So I end up having the utmost respect for I think for Division 3 athletes. Not to knock anyone who is, D1 or D2. Because obviously, your skill level has to be immaculately high at that rate. But, just kind of walking the walk with how other Division 3 athletes were that, you're not getting paid like the people at D1, D2 especially are now. You're doing that Division 3 level because you have the opportunity to continue playing the sport, but you get to actually still be kind of a student at that same time. So it's really that life balance aspects. Yeah, man. Shout out D3. Always say it. Um, I definitely wanted to get into kind of your transition and journey. So obviously you talked about essentially with your football, that there was a point in time that as a football player, one, you were looking forward more to the lifts and everything before you even look towards the games and everything. So with all of that, like how was that transition of kind of realizing that the sport you play since you were 5 years old, that it's like, you know what, maybe this isn't really something for me now, and then that transition to fully just go into the gym. What was that like just for you as a person trying to go through that, for something as long as you did it?
Well, I think I mean, it was kind of challenging to navigate because I think like my whole identity was wrapped up in being a football player. So like everybody that I was around, I shouldn't say everyone because I had a lot of friends too that were very into the weight room and into more so the athletic preparation side of things. And again, we were our athletic trainer even at the time, like we were friends with him, like he would invite us to like play pickup hoops and stuff. So like I don't know. I it wasn't it wasn't like that I was letting everyone in my community that I was around my whole life down or anything like that, but that was, like, something that I thought about, and I mean, even the conversation with my dad when I told him, like, I was like, I was done playing football, like, that was kind of a I felt like that was an awkward conversation too, a little bit, which, like, my dad and I we have a good relationship, but, like, it's just I would say it's an interesting relationship, like, we don't necessarily have, like, a lot of stuff in common, like, he's, worked out of town a lot when I was a kid. Like, just he's a true blue collar Midwest guy. He likes to hunt, likes to fish, which like I like shooting guns and I like going fishing and stuff. But like that's not like my main hobbies are like doing shit that's active and like lifting weights. That's what I like to do. I still like playing sports and lifting weights. But yeah, no, I guess the whole thing about like my identity being all wrapped up in the sport. It was kind of a tough thing, I guess, to like break free of that. But I knew that the burnout was becoming like a thing when like I just wasn't looking forward to playing the game at all anymore. And again, like that thing about like playing Division 3 sports and not making any money, having some student loan debt, just thinking about like, all right, like what do I want to do? It's that transition of that like naive high school kid who, is a freshman or sophomore and is still like thinking about, oh, I'm going to make money playing football. Like, no, you're fucking not. Like, you're not that good. I hope I don't want to come on this podcast and like poop on people's dreams. That's not what I'm trying to do here. But also, like, I was a good high school football player. Like, that's it. Like, I wasn't first team all state. I wasn't, so yeah, I don't know. I personally think I needed a little bit of a reality check. And I mean, listen, man, I think there's some things that happened too, like when I was younger, like with, hey, like, I'm going into high school as a tight end and I'm 185 pounds. And, the coaches are like, yeah, well, if you want to start varsity as a sophomore, you need to get to 235. So like there was a period of time where I gained a lot of weight super fast. So like I lost athleticism, my ability to like play basketball and stuff where I was a 6'2" white kid, but I was a halfway decent basketball player going into high school. But my athleticism, just like my ability for being a wall and playing offensive tackle, good. But like when you gain 35 pounds in 6 months or whatever, like that does something to your speed and agility. You know what I mean? I didn't gain 35 pounds of lean tissue in 6 months either. We'll just put it that way. So like, and I don't, my parents, where now they're like lifting weights and they look better than they ever have, I think, in their life, because they come here and train with me. But like then they didn't really know anything about lifting weights or, eating adequate protein or, like kind of standard American diet stuff. Um, but yeah, man, I don't know. I think the identity thing I think probably was a little bit challenging for me. But honestly, man, I had such a good group of friends around me that were like into training and lifting weights that like it got to the point I didn't care. I was kind of like, I didn't really care what people thought. I didn't care what the coaches thought about me stepping away from football. Like I want to like pursue this myself for myself. And also like I wanted to focus on school too. Like my grades they were fine, but they weren't as good as they were like after I stopped playing sports and I could focus more on my schooling and stuff. So yeah, I don't know. I don't know if that answered your question, but
No, it definitely did. I mean, I was fortunate enough that even though I didn't step away, I feel like a lot of kids just in general, when you are playing a sport for your entire life or you're doing something for X number of years, when I was 21 and we lost by 50 in the first round of the NCAA tournament to the team who won the national championship. And as a senior now, I'm looking at myself, I'm like, all right, for the last X number of years, since I was like 8 years old, I've been working towards the upcoming season. Now that's not happening anymore. So it's kind of like a what's going on now. And I feel like a lot of people, especially who were former college athletes, it ends up being such a huge identity finding and identity crisis that, now that I've had the opportunity to work with a lot of college kids, I try to also remind them, like, listen, you need to find out who you are outside of your sport. Like, you need to take your sport away. Even if you're playing, like, it doesn't matter. You need to figure out who you are, like, because one of the best recruiting tactics that, my dad as a college coach, he tells all the kids before they even commit or anything, he says, the biggest thing is 10 years out when you and your wife or significant other, you're out to dinner with another couple. The first thing that's not going to be asked by the other person is going to be, so did you play a college sport? Like, it's going to be, what do you do? What are you doing in life?
Yeah.
And that's the most important thing. So playing a sport is a privilege. It's not a right. Obviously, it's so important to us that I think a lot of kids themselves, I feel like sometimes depending on the household, like parents can kind of push that sport into them as well a little bit too much, that just becomes your entire identity.
No, you make really good points, and I don't mean to cut you off, but I like personally I think got really lucky, and I was talking to my parents about this the other night, and they're like, "Oh, you're not lucky. You've worked your tail off and da 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 da, and been consistent, and been okay with eating shit, and being a trainer that like, well, is that okay if I cuss too? Sorry."
Yeah, you're good. You're good.
Like eating, from the perspective of like that personal trainer schedule where you're working a lot of hours, you're not getting paid like super well for those hours. But and I get that for sure, but like I mean lucky in the sense that like I fell in love with training myself. I absolutely loved it. So where maybe in the beginning there was a little bit of that identity stuff, and more so I think for me it was just like immaturity where I'm just listening to voices and people that are saying things about giving their opinion about, well, he's not playing football, and like, okay, like I don't care. That's not my whole thing. My whole thing is like I want to lift weights and play pickup basketball and start helping other people with their fitness and their health and I had this like tunnel vision of like what I have now essentially. I knew that I was a good enough communicator, a good enough person who like can be a chameleon and get along with like anybody in the world essentially. When you train for 10 years, you train all kinds of people, from different backgrounds, different issues, different problems, different injuries, different home life, different, all of these things. Like you take on a lot of your clients and athletes stuff. So like I knew that I could do that, and I knew I wanted to do that because especially like in a gym setting, because like that's where I am most comfortable. I'm definitely not the guy that's like at the bar like talking to people like, and I wasn't like the guy who was buying girls drinks and so that was never me. But like in this setting, I always felt like I could be a chameleon. So yeah, I guess I think the whole identity thing and like the, figuring out what you like. I got lucky with that because I just found something that I really enjoyed. And my whole thing from like day one was like, I want to do this to help people. And when I started doing it, even just in the group setting at like Anytime Fitness, like even the way, because like for those workouts, like those workouts were like corporate would write those workouts essentially. And then you would like just deliver the training session to, there wasn't like, I wasn't programming anything or anything like that, but like just how those people felt after sessions and how they felt about hanging out with you for an hour or whatever was just a really cool feeling. So like selfishly, I enjoyed it as well, as far as like, just the endorphins of like just training and working out and feeling a little bit better in the moment. Like I really enjoyed that piece alone. And I, like I said, I just felt like I had the tools as just who I am and the charisma to be able to deliver that for other people for career, essentially. Maybe I wasn't thinking about like the career thing like at that moment, but as time went on, I definitely started to think about it that way. And I also thought too, like, because I saw people that did have a career that like maybe didn't really care about people as much, and yet they were still like being paid money. I can do a better job than that, you know. Like I can, if this person can do this, then I for sure can as well. But you mentioned the identity thing, and I only wanted to make one other point. From the perspective of like young student athletes, I would say even like in high school, like don't get your whole identity wrapped up in your sport. I know that's like a lot and can be hard to say, but I've coached kids, athletes that their whole identity is wrapped up in their sport, and then they do have like a tough injury, you know, an ACL or a, you know, or whatever, right? Like I think the ACL is probably the one that's done a couple of athletes that I've worked with. What do I have? And in my experience, and again, this is not like a diagnosis, but like they get depressed, they lose a lot of weight really quickly, they stop, you know, socializing with their friends. So it's like, and I know that's not easy either, like, especially with the volume of sport that a lot of these kids play. And a lot of these kids do specialize, but like if you can start to do things just outside of your sport, whether that's like other sports recreationally or whether that's learning how to make smash burger, like whatever, you know, studying finance or economics or comedy, like anything that you want to do, whether and again, I'm not saying it has to be like for your professional life, like it doesn't have to be related to like your income in the future, but like you said, Tyler, like figure out who you really are, not necessarily like what your current one thing identity is super heavy. Cause like, yes, I've lucked out. I really like training. It's not only my hobby, but it's also my career. But I have other hobbies too. Like I'm not just a meathead. You know what I mean? So I think that's important.
No, 100%. And I think very similarly, that was kind of how I was when I was done playing basketball. I was fortunate enough that nobody kind of forced me into the training thing. That I was just something I really started to enjoy more of the deeper I got into college, and that's kinda just where I fully shifted to. It was a passion, then it became a love. Now it's probably I'm gonna use the term obsession, like, it's just an obsession at this point, but it's also a career path for me as well. But just being in that atmosphere, being able to help other people and help other college athletes, because I didn't have that as much because we didn't have a full-time strength conditioning coach at the college I was at, so being able to work even as an outsourced entity or just work with our basketball guys or some of our other programs is giving that information because wish I had that. And I know how important it is to their athletic development and whatever those qualities are. So yeah, no, that was great. So I wanted to kind of get into also a little bit of your coaching. That not to say that's the one determining factor, but if you can coach somebody else's program, like that's a pretty cool quality to be able to have. But what are some of the big changes or similarities outside of obviously, I think the clientele that you work with? What were some of maybe those coaching qualities that have kind of changed or stayed the same over time?
Well, again, with the anytime stuff, you know, it was a template by from corporate. You know, they used a lot of you know, TRX, trying to remember, it's been so long. I'm sure there were like step up variations, and we had dumbbells I remember over in that area. From then to now, I guess when I left anytime, then I started like, you know, I was working mostly with clients. Like I would have some athletes, like maybe, you know, two or three, or some of them even one-on-one. Most of the adults that I had were one-on-one. So again, like a lot of repetition effort strength training. I was not educated at all on plyos, how to scale that for like for adults, for athletes, that kind of stuff. I mean, I remember I'd be writing down like a client's, like, you know, like I'd write him like a 4 week program or something like that. And I remember one of the trainers like coming up to me and being like, "Why are you doing that, bro? Like, you need to get good at like writing their workouts right before they come in the door," you know, like that kind of thing. So again, I was kind of learning on the fly. I was kind of learning on the fly, like about that kind of stuff, about like, you know, periodization and programming. And again, not that like adult stuff needs to be super periodized, but like I found that like when I did that and I wrote some stuff down on paper and like I showed the people that I was working with that I was putting some thought into like their training and putting some thought into like, you know, their goals and stuff, like they appreciated that and they liked that. And again, this is before AI and stuff, right? Where now like shit, you can like get decent training blueprints like from AI if you type in somebody's, you know, height, weight, age, stats, goals. Like it'll spit you out something way better than what I wrote in, whatever 2016 or 2017 or whatever that was. So yeah, I think the biggest evolvement is just like a true understanding of like principle based strength training and exercise categorization, I would say, so like having a better understanding of plyos and like the importance of doing like some sort of plyometric or power training even for adult populations, scaling that for those populations, people that have pain and have had injuries and that are banged up and that are maybe overweight and things like that. Also like return to play from the athletic performance perspective, the plyos, the strength training, this idea of having conversations with athletes that are in a return to play situation about like, hey, when you're doing that, where's your pain on a scale of 1 to 10 type of idea, hey, 1 or 0 to 4 is kind of our green light. We're getting to that 5 out of 10. That's kind of for me, that's kind of our yellow or red light. I think just learning how to scale exercises too and movements for people that have, aches and pains or previous injuries or, and not only like the physical side of things, but also like the mental side of things, right? Like some people have just like mental blocks with certain things. Well, I picked something up one time and I tweaked my back, hey, for that person, like, can we give them, some sort of, I know this word gets overused too, but like some sort of constraints around movement patterns. And I mean, even just that, like understanding, like, squatting, hinging, some single legs, some upper body pushing and pulling. Like, if you like that was something that like at the time, like when that was kind of introduced, it was like, oh well, that kind of makes sense. Like if you're doing, kind of equal amounts of squatting, hinging, pushing, pulling, like you're kind of hitting all the major muscle groups of your upper and lower body, right? So yeah, I mean, I guess that would be probably the biggest evolution, was just like, kind of going from like shooting at the hip and, just kind of like, oh well, I do this variation of, this and that. But I will say that like even back when I first started, because I was training myself, I kind of had some semblance of an idea of like movements that maybe required more, more coordination or more stable, more stability, more strength and stability. On like an easy example would be like, a walking lunge versus a leg press. It's like, all right, like Betty Sue, who's 60 and has had like 2 knee replacements, like she might do better with a leg press with her feet a little higher on the sled versus me. I might not give her a walking lunge on day one. Now, like if she wants to work to walking lunges, like cool, we can do that. But like, again, that I guess that idea of like Pat Davidson calls it ground, that idea of just like more constraints. I think that's a useful way to kind of look at things. But like I kind of had an idea of that. I just wasn't thinking about principles when I first started. It was just like, all right, like this person's just gonna do some strength training today. But yeah, I think as time went on, pretty early on, I had a decent idea of like, all right, like I'm not just gonna hit like a whole hour of pressing movements with this person. Like we're gonna do a couple pressing, couple pulling, maybe some biceps and shoulders, isolation stuff like that. But yeah, I would say the power training for adults being very important, plyos, scaling plyos, and then scaling strength exercises to fit the person in front of me and where they're at. I think that's probably the biggest evolution that I've had over the years.
Yeah, it's funny you say that because I feel like when I was a young like, obviously, I'm still kinda in the newer-ish, 4 years of doing this. Early on, I felt like I was a very is a my way or the highway kind of coaching,
Sure.
and then the more reps I got, I was like, "You know what? So person A and person B are not going to be at the same. They're 100% for the day. One can be a full battery. The other one might be like a half battery or anything like that. And kind of just meeting them where they're at the same time. And I feel like I've gotten that a lot more this year, getting a little more collaborative with my athletes because I have the opportunity to do that at times. So, I know I've said this before on another podcast, but like, a prime example is like with the hockey kids that I work with. If I say like yesterday, they're doing their early off season stuff and we're at a really high volume because their hockey focus is slim to none right now. And I said to one of them, or we were doing their lift and they were doing, like 10 sets of back squats or something like, or not 10 sets, 10 reps of back squats. If they were doing 10 sets, I would just give them clusters at that point. But when they were doing back squats, like one of them was like, I feel like I really can't get like a good range of motion because I took the box away. I'm like, I want you to each go as low as you can. So I don't care if you break parallel, if you get to 90, wherever that range of motion is. And I think when we're talking to those athletes, one of them came up to me and was like, I feel like I can't go lower than a quarter squat doing the back squat. And I was like, all right, like, let me watch you do a few reps. And watching her, I was like, okay, pull the back squat away, hop on leg press. You can control where that range of motion is. And I think it's really important, like when coaches realize at any level that they should be able to do that with their athletes, or at least maybe have a menu and kind of looking at what they're doing. Like, okay, here's option A, but if option A is not working, we know there's more than one way of getting that stimulus or solution. So let's look at option B, C, D, whatever it might be. So definitely getting more into that with my athletes. So, and I feel bad for like the first group of basketball kids I ever had. I had no idea what I was doing. Like they had some ridiculous in-season stuff, and it was a good thing none of them really bought in to the weight room because it was not good. Like
Yeah.
I actually looked back at one of our old programs and I was like, did I actually write that? Like that's my lord. That should be burnt in a fireplace or just erased from everything possible. But no, I think that's great. Like looking at how you've been able to kind of scale everything to an individual person, because as much I think as we want to say like, yeah, as coaches, like we want to just give everybody the same workout, like at times we can, but we also really can't at the same time. And kind of going in depth with it, like with my basketball guys, I have guys who are under 6 feet. I got guys who are well over 6 feet. When I tell them we're doing different squat variations, or if we're doing like a box squat that, we're putting that constraint, especially in season, on their range of motion, just from a volume standpoint and just from an energy expenditure standpoint as well. I tell our guys, if you were under 6 feet tall, you were utilizing like an 18-inch box. If you are over 6 feet, if you're at least 6'3", like don't be going anything lower than a 20, because that's just going to be a lot of energy for you to put out. But that whole idea that you were talking about with scaling it to different people, I think that's something that you have to look at just in any level. Is I think you have your own idea, but then they have their own idea of what they need and whatever they're going through. You definitely have to kind of be, I think, a little more flexible in what we do, because I think even more, and I said it to Matt in the last episode, in the private sector, I think it's harder at times compared to what I do with the college setting, that those kids are coming back no matter what. If I say, hey, they don't like the lift, but we got to lift at 7 o'clock, you're showing up regardless. Like if
On
you
the
don't show up,
schedule.
you're not
Yeah.
playing. Like
Yeah.
if they don't but everybody else, whether it's, you or anybody in the private sector, it's a lot of how are you going to build that enjoyable environment. And this is kind of segueing into something I want to get in with you too, is, building that enjoyable environment for them to say, yeah, I want to come back and work with Ben, or I want to continue this. And I got that, essentially the enjoyable environment. I scoured Instagram a little bit. I love like those posts that you put out where, you're talking about with different concepts and different ideas. And obviously everybody has their own bias, but a lot of the stuff you really hit the nail on the head with. So I wanted to go into, essentially, as a coach, no matter if it's with your high school kids or kids who are in college, how you go about even early on creating that enjoyable environment for anyone just to come back. Like, is there anything specific that you do, or kind of what's that? Basically, what are you doing essentially to make that environment enjoyable for them, other than like a scaling perspective?
Well, I mean, I definitely think the first thing is just like having conversations with the athletes, like literally as soon as they come in, like just asking them how they're doing, how their day went, how school is, whatever, how their weekend tournaments went. Just like day after day after day, you do that, and like kids open up more. Some kids come in a little bit shy and a little bit timid, and they open up more over time. I think trying to make the you know, sprinting and the agility and stuff like that, like competitive and stuff too. I think that helps drive, not only does that help drive intent, but it also just drives competition, and young athletes start talking to each other a little bit. start intermingling. Also, just using different drills too to set up. We do that kind of stuff where they are like partnered up. So like we'll do like some PVC pipe stuff where we just hey, like partner's gonna drop the PVC pipe in a certain way, you've got to react and catch it before it hits the floor. Just giving them different rules and different constraints. And with games like that, different stuff like that can be fun. For getting kids just communicating with each other, laughing, having a good time. And even when they start like their strength training again, it's just like having conversations with them between sets, trying to take like the job seriously, but not take yourself too seriously. So making things light, between sets, I think can be huge. I test the kids quarterly here, the athletes. So I think that helps drive some desire to come back and want to train, and engagement into like what they're doing in here. Yeah, I mean, I think from the adult side of things, you got to meet them where they're at. You got some adults that like they maybe don't like exercise and training as much as I do, and that's cool. Like I totally understand that. I don't want everybody to be mini me's in here. That's not the goal. So a lot of that really is just like meeting them where they're at, being a I know I say cool person. I don't know, that's not like a objective thing, but like just being cool to hang out with for 75 minutes or so at a time. Ask, if they want to talk, they'll talk. If they, they don't want to talk, they won't. Most of my athletes, or most of my adults, they come in and they want to be here. They want to hang out. They want to work hard too, because they have goals as well. So yeah, I think communication and just trying to be, trying to keep things lighthearted as much as possible is an important thing in the private sector. But by the same token, like when you start working with somebody, like laying out clear expectations about like, hey, if you've got these goals, here's what we have to do, to get there. And obviously don't see someone, most of the adults and athletes that I work with, are seeing me between 2 and 4 times per week. So that's like, y- you know 60 to 75-minute blocks of time. It's like there's a lot of things that, there's a lot of pieces of the puzzle that have to be, you don't have to nail it 100% all the time, but like there's definitely things um that we need to be considering, outside of training. Obviously most people know these things, being generally physically active, eating healthy, getting better sleep, blah 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 blah, all these things that like most people already know. But again, like the other part of this too is like, even just having some of those conversations, even like during sessions, asking them like, how are we doing, if they have certain goals, how are we doing on nutrition? A lot of athletes are under eating. Like, hey, do you feel like you're eating enough? Like, do we need to do an additional consultation to like talk about these things and go more in depth on these things? Or do I need to refer you out, to somebody who is a nutritionist or a registered dietitian, or someone who can help you with maybe your eating behaviors or whatever like that. So I know this is like cliche, but like just like showing your clients and athletes that you actually care, not just about like, their weight on the bar, but like them as a person and their goals specifically, I think goes a really long.
Yeah, I wholeheartedly agree. And I think as coaches, when we're able to kind of show them that, we're not just, like you said, we're not just kind of meatheads and not turning everybody into like mini versions of us. No matter who we're working with, I think it's going to go a long way. I always try to connect, with my kids, especially, between the basketball guys I spend the most time with, and then the hockey kids, especially with the hockey, because I'll have boys and girls at the same time. I'll be honest, like the way I interact with the guys is very different from how I interact with the girls, and especially at that age group, in the high school age group, they're so with the guys I can kind of be like, oh, it's hanging out with the boys a little bit, in between sets and kind of like giving each other crap. And I'm like, really?
Yeah,
That's how much
you can
weight?
kinda
Like,
be you can kinda be that older brother, for
yeah,
sure.
so I'm able to do that, and then with the girls, it's much more of like the nurturing side. Like if they're like they'll come in, they're comfortable enough with me and be like, guess what happened with this boy I'm talking to or whatever.
Sure.
And I'm like, this is great. So I know what we're talking about, in our rest times. Like, so I'm gonna get all the tea from every 14 to 17-year-old girl right now. But honestly, I think that area of comfortability that they're able, we show our sides that like we're actually human beings at the same time. Yes,
Totally.
I am stressing how much you're going to put on the bar and how much we're going to move and how hard you're working, but that's not the entirety. If I'd be a poor coach, if coaching was all I really did, it would make my job really easy. And it's making those connections with everybody else. And I think that's just also what creates total buy-in from, what we're trying to have them do and what they're trying to get out of it at the same time.
Right. Well, and I want again, the expectation up front, I always tell, like, I clients and athletes, like, you know, I give great effort and have a great attitude, and, like, we will get along really well. Uh, Specifically for the athletes, there's some adults that come in and have bad attitudes, and, it is what it is sometimes, um but no, great effort, great attitude, and, tell them, like, if you're giving great effort and you have a great attitude, and, like, I can tell, you are willing to accept some coaching when it comes to not only, like, exercise execution and stuff like that. Usually, most people pick up on that pretty well. I think, again, that's a whole other thing that, like, I think if you're programming well for the person, you're not having to say 15,000 things. But, like, if you're giving great effort and you're the type of person that, like, when I say, hey, like, that looked really easy, add 10 pounds to the bar, you're not like, huffing and puffing and like, we're gonna get along great. And again, like, those times where you're resting, and those time, like, and have just general conversations and that kind of thing. Katie Dabrowski says this all the time, so, like, I'm stealing her thunder here, but, like, we want to create a positive movement experience for the people that we work with, regardless of whether it's a adult or an athlete. Because the reality is, if you zoom all the way out in the United States, people don't hit physical activity guidelines, bro. So it's like, if I can have a small impact on my community and the adults and the athletes that I work with and the time that I'm here on planet Earth alive and doing this, and they go into not only, like, their sporting careers potentially in college, but, like, if they go into their young adult life and then their adult life and then their life as a older person, like, and they stay consistent with hitting physical activity guidelines, and they lift weights a couple times a week, and they get 150 minutes of aerobic activity or 75 minutes of vigorous cardio, like, if they do those things and they continue fostering a community of, like, movement of people that move, like, that means more to me than anything. Goggins and, like, that kind of stuff, that has its place, like, for people that are going into the military, and I understand all of that, but, like, on a population level, it's like part of my I would say I'm not doing my job if training isn't somewhat enjoyable for these people that I'm working with. Now, again, I know that, like, there's gonna be some people that hate working out, some people that like working out. I know that there's even gonna be people that, like, I hate when you program this, or I hate when but it's like, that's where, again, that conversation of, like, all right, well, you don't like this single leg exercise, you want to do something else that trains, like, the same muscle tissues, maybe in a little bit different way. Like, I'm not married to any methods or anything like that. It's more so principled approach, and, like you said, that trainable menu is important. But, yeah, I think more than anything, even people that, like, don't like working out, if you can create an environment where they, like, either like you or like the other people that are in your groups, or then they're more likely to stick with it and continue to hit physical activity guidelines for the rest of their life.
Yeah, I mean, it's evident, especially United States. We're in an epidemic where people aren't hitting the minimal movement that's needed, and from a nutrition standpoint, I don't even need to go down that rabbit hole. It's an epidemic, and unfortunately, a lot of people don't know, I think, where to start or know exactly what they need, and that's where people like us and other coaches come into play, and can make that positive impact. And not saying that, like I said before, they don't have to be just like us or other people we know, but if you're moving, any kind of movement, even if you're hitting the bare minimum movement is better than no movement at the end of the day. And have some healthy carbs, cut down your sugar, cut down your simple sugar, slap some protein in there, get the heart pumping, lift some weights. Like you do a mix of that, your quality of life is just it's gonna blow up
For sure.
exponentially. So yeah, man. So I want to get into some quick segments. I want to look at your time and I appreciate you hopping on. So I want to get into a few quick segments before everything. So first one is, what is a unpopular opinion in the industry you have? And it can be a truth of yours or a trend that you are in complete favor of or you think is just complete bull crap. One of the two. What's an unpopular opinion of yours?
The first one that popped to mind, I don't know. I feel like I just shared Jordan Syatt's post about this. So I feel like I've done a decent job at like curating my Instagram page from the perspective of like I see a lot of the stuff I really want to see and I don't see a lot of the stuff I don't really want to see anymore, which is
Yeah.
kind of cool because I'm just not a fan of all the noise, if I'm being completely honest. Like I go to my explore page and it's a lot of like animal videos, if I'm being completely honest, dude. Like and it's great. Like anyway. So the conversation of like walking, and like how there's fitness coaches and trainers that are saying that that doesn't count as cardio and that's not enough, da 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 da. And it's like, again, people, I don't care I don't really care how you look at it or whether you count it as cardio or whatever. Again, people in our country, people in the United States are not hitting physical activity guidelines at all. Like it's not debatable. These like a newsflash, the data's in and people don't hit physical activity guidelines. So like walking, man, walking is a huge step in the right direction for a lot of people. If you can get them even just like doing some sort of a ring or a watch or a pedometer of some sort, and you can get them aware of like how much they're moving or how little they're moving. And then you can add to that over time as they feel more comfortable and confident with the fact that they can move their body more, or they can make the time right to move their body more from a health perspective. That is a good thing. That is a net positive. That is a step in the right direction of doing more high intensity cardio or more zone 2 or whatever all the quote unquote experts and these coaches that want to get on these oh well, walking's not enough. Well, for the person that is obese and doesn't ever move, getting them to a point where they're, if they're only taking 1,500 steps a day or 2,000 steps a day and they go to 5,000 steps a day, that is going to have a dramatic and that is going to have a dramatic effect on their health and their all cause mortality. And that is not just me spitting out bullshit. There's evidence to support what I'm saying. So again, I think walking is great. And if you want to run and you want to get to the point where you can run or you can do more high intensity on the feet cardio, that's great too. But you do not have to run. Like you can start with walking, you can start with something like an echo bike or even a recumbent bike, like if that's all you have access to. But again, we hit on this earlier, like all movement is good movement. So yeah, anyway, make walking
Feel like I want to get a shirt that says that. Yeah, people. I mean, the amount of people I know that are like I've seen it so many times, and I'm trying to funnel out like people on social media that like if I just can't look at stuff and just stuff I don't agree with and stuff that's just kind of like all fluff and noise. Like, so I'm trying to get to the same point. I'm kind of close to it. I feel like where it's like I can just open it and it's all stuff I want to see and stuff that I
Mhm.
can kind of agree with, but yeah, for the people who say that walking is not real, here's reality. Elevate your heart rate. You're doing something. Go walk on a treadmill for 30 minutes. Doesn't have to be incline. Just go walk for 30 minutes and you're going to get however a few thousand steps in. You're doing something. Like your heart is going to be elevated. Your blood is pumping. The volume is now going to be a lot more than you just being sedentary sitting somewhere. So like
Yeah. It's
it's
all con
crazy.
it's all context dependent. So don't get it twisted. I'm not saying that like me or you going for a walk is like a fantastic cardio stimulus. I'm not saying that. But
Yeah.
like again, zoom all the way out. Zoom all the way out and you go to Walmart. Go to Kroger. go to your grocery stores, go out to the mall, like go see people in public. A large majority of those folks are not even close to hitting physical activity guidelines. So walking is going to be great for them.
Yeah, 100%. So fully agree with that opinion. Amazing take. Next one, rant and rave. Stole it from everybody else. I know we both listen to Coach Him Up. So rant and rave. What is something in, and you kind of touched on it a little bit with the unpopular, but what's something in the industry that before you cleared out your Instagram that you would open it up and be like, please, for the love of God, I never want to see this ever again. And on the flip side, what's the something maybe on Instagram that's like, yes, give me the algorithm to see this more. So what would be the rant and rave? And you do not have to hold back either.
I don't know. There's probably like a lot of things I could rant about. I mean, I really get frustrated with the like. There's a lot of these physician type accounts now, like these orthopedic physicians that are like talking about what exercises you should never do and in the gym, and it's like, fellas, that again, newsflash, the evidence is in. If you build tolerance to any movement and like you don't do it too quickly and you don't progress in intensity and volume too quickly, like, you can adapt to it. Humans are very adaptable, and even people that have pain or have imaging findings, I'm blanking on the word, pathology. You've probably seen the study on the volleyball player's shoulders, the professional volleyball player's
Yeah.
shoulders, or you've heard about it, like where it's like, I don't know how many girls it was in the study, 25 or 30 professional volleyball players, whatever it was, and none of them had any pain. And like all of them had slight rotator cuff tears and labrum stuff, like just like stuff on imaging that somebody would be like, oh my gosh, like and it's like, they don't have pain. So it's like, I don't know, man. Your body, we're very adaptable. We're very resilient. Again, I'm not saying form doesn't matter and technique doesn't matter. That's not what I want people to like take away from this, from me saying this, and that nothing matters. I'm not like a nihilist. Like, I'm not, that's not what I'm getting at here. But yeah, that's kind of an annoying thing. I would say the other rant, like just real quick, that is annoying. I don't like seeing like the green screen stuff where it's like, somebody talking shit about like I am of the opinion that like the Seedmans, the functional patterns, the whatever, like all this goofy shit that like we know isn't necessarily stimulative enough to create physiological adaptation. All of us people that like have all those people that are above average IQ know that this is all bullshit. So just like ignore it. It needs to just be completely ignored. It needs to just be completely ignored. Get the fuck out of here. Just completely ignore, block, report. It's false information. It's false information. Again, like it's nonsense. It's nonsense. So like I don't need to hear some good coach's opinion about it being nonsense. I already know it's nonsense. And listen, I've engaged with like GOTA people because that is a frustrating thing where they say like, they show it's the, Tatum deadlifting. That's why he tore his Achilles. It's like, oh my God, what are we talking about? Like, this is so silly. What are you, like, literally, what are you saying? Like, he plays a ton of basketball. He's a super forceful guy. Yeah, I mean, damn to bad luck.
Yeah.
Shit happens when you're at the highest levels of sport. And again, I'm not saying that there's not there could be other things going on. I don't nutrition, sleep, but that's the thing, right? Is there's so many factors that we have to think about that go into that kind of stuff. But again, I'm just for like reporting these accounts and blocking and just complete ignorance of the stuff that we know is not useful and that we know is not stimulative and that we know is not based on any evidence and any sports science. And yeah, so again, I hope I don't want people to think I'm narrow-minded either. Like, I'm totally open to like learning new concepts and adding things in, but like it also has to be, again, I think it does need to be like principle based, have some evidence to support the claims.
Yeah. Before we get into the rave, yeah, 2 episodes in a row now I'm saying the GOTA thing, like the green screen, everything like that. Like that, first of all, you're using somebody else's content to boost your own at the same time. And I'm just like, no, just come up with honestly, if you can't come up with your own, everybody has access to AI. Like, let's just typing something into AI at that.
But hey, that's the bigger rant here is like the algorithm, this like Instagram. I want that to like change. I
Yeah,
want that to like get back to like Instagram was 8 years ago or 10
yeah.
years ago. You know what I mean? Where it's like, the algorithm instead of pushing the clickbaity, fringe stuff, like why can't we promote the stuff that's like good information? Like there should be some sort of a algorithmic, filter system that runs these things through like is this actually evidence based, is this actually based in some sort of science. And again, I'm not saying that like we shouldn't experiment and play with things and use personal anecdote. I'm not saying that either, but like those kinds of things, those extremes, like that shouldn't be pushed. Get it out of here, Instagram. So Instagram, do better.
Instagram, do better. We don't want to see
But
it.
it's not. But that's not going to happen.
No.
That's our, that's the news
They got to
cycle.
add something in there where there's a AI or bot that's in Instagram, add it to Meta, and just the number one question should be: is this high IQ'd or low IQ'd? If it meets the
Bingo.
low IQ, just throw it out. Just
Yeah,
don't
it's
even
got
let
to
it get
go
posted at that point, or just keep it with the low
it's got to
IQ
go
people.
for sure.
That's great. What about a rave? What do we like seeing?
Bro, there's a lot of coaches. There's a lot of coaches doing a lot of really good shit, dude. Like a lot that are like, I mean, if we're talking about athletic performance, like even outside of athletic performance, I see so many coaches like doing like quality power training and plyometrics with their adults. I see so many coaches, getting their adults stronger, and I see so many coaches that I'm learning from the perspective of like, speed development and track and field. Like the amount of stuff that I've taken from Dan Bach over the years, like that dude's a genius when it comes to plyos and track and
The
field
king
stuff,
of
especially
stretch
as
shortening cycles.
yeah, and especially like as somebody who's like in the last three or 4 years, like taken on track and field athletes and like experimented with stuff. And you get your first track athlete, as a former offensive line, like you're just a lot of it's like you're learning on the fly. So it's like, and again, a lot of the general principles reign true. Like, get a kid that comes in and they've never lifted weights before. You start lifting weights and they start bounce goes up, sprint speed goes up, acceleration, all the things, right? But then it's like once they have gotten those newbie gains, it's like, all right, like where do we go from here? So like, I don't know. I just think generally speaking, the rave would be there's so many coaches out there now that are doing like really, really good stuff. And again, it's coming from a place of like they actually just give a shit about their athletes and clients, and almost exclusively all of them also train themselves. So like that would be the other side of this of the rave is like there's so many coaches that are getting after it, bro. There's so many coaches that are like training hard, sprinting fast, playing different sports. I mean, like even a guy like Clifton Harsey, like Cliff's a friend. Like dude is in his 40s and is like, playing basketball and sprinting around, running around with his kids and flinging kettlebells around and lifting heavy, and he's jacked. And it's like, that kind of stuff is very inspiring for somebody like me who's like, early 30s. Like, I want to be doing this shit when I'm in my 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, son, So just a lot of really good coaches that I've learned from over the years. Too many to name. All just so many coaches doing great stuff, and it's cool opening up my Instagram and like seeing all the people that I've interacted with and the coaches that I've either had on my podcast or done interviews with that are just out there not only crushing their training but like delivering great training to their clients and athletes and hungry to like learn more, from whatever. Again, people like Cliff and people like Matt Watson and all these great educators in our space. So it's cool.
Yeah. And it's great to see too. And I feel like that goes back to the whole algorithm thing. That's, I get enjoyment being in my mid 20s, now shifting into the later half of my 20s. At that age, like someone like like Cliff, who I would, he's one of the dream people I would love to have on this at some point. But like someone at like his age, or even I think a prime example is Blaine. Blaine's just an animal at 40 years old. He runs a 4.5 40.
Savage.
Yeah, he's a complete dog. And I think it goes so much, like you just said, that you see the coaches getting after it themselves too. I think that's one of the most pivotal things as a coach is that you're talking the talk and you walk the walk. Like the amount of, I feel, respect that you get not only from other coaches, but also from the people you train when they see like you're giving them whatever or programming, prescribing different loads or whatever you might be doing. And probably they're like, what is this dude talking about? And then you see them or you see one of us actually do something like that. And then they're like, okay, now that there's kind of a new profound respect, I think, at times. Or I like to think there is, because if I'm seeing the person who's giving me something like being in the weeds, getting after it themselves, I'm like, you know what? I get a respect for you because you're actually doing the thing too. You're not just saying it. So I think that's always going to go is always going to go a huge way. It's going to go a long way. And I agree. There's so many different people. I feel like you can't even name it. But even from like a coaching perspective, like buying other people's programs, I feel like just from running clusters for like 14 weeks, I've learned so much. Even just reading how the admin, who God, that's another person. He's on my dream team wish list of people. Never met a person who loved tendons more than him. But like just from a coaching perspective, like if you ever get it, how simple and straightforward it is. Like literally, when he prescribed a deadlift, he goes, "Just pick it up. Just pick the bar up off the floor." And I did that with our basketball guys like last week when we were doing conventionals because they never done it. I'm like, guys, we're gonna do conventionals, and they're like, "How do we do this?" I'm like, drop your hips back, get some parallel legs, and literally, I kid you not, look up, pick the bar up off the floor. And they're like, oh my. I'm like, guys, I know
Whoa.
it's crazy. Now do that a ton of times and just make sure like you're doing the same thing. So yeah, but even stuff like that, just seeing other people's programming, seeing other coaches, it's great to see what they do and be able to kind of add that into our own style as well at times. So yeah. Last question. What piece of advice would you give to either your younger self or a young coach who is trying to follow along kind of a similar path that you have?
Stick with it. Stick with it. It's the early, I think, unless you're super fortunate and you have a certain connection and you get blessed with like a really cool opportunity early on, it can be a grind. It can be hard. A lot of times early in my career, again, there's long hours, not great pay. But again, it was worth it for me because it was just so enjoyable. So like I guess not that I wasn't like worried about, making more money and being more financially just set to pay my bills, honestly. But I think the coaches that stick with it and stick in there and and truly have a passion for helping other people and really enjoy being around other people in the gym setting and the training environment, you'll get there. It takes time, takes a lot of reps. The right opportunities will present themselves if you continuously over deliver for the clients and athletes that you're working with.
Yeah, fully agree with that. And that, I feel like I'm kind of shifting into that myself. Like after 4 years, stuff is really starting to jump off for me. I have a lot of stuff like kind of in the works, for myself in my life that, it starts to feel like after doing reps for that amount of time, it's starting to pay off. Now, and obviously Rome wasn't built in a day, so don't expect this to happen in a day. And I even said that I had the opportunity to talk to like a lot of our applied exercise science kids this past week and had them because they're doing a strength conditioning class. And the professor wanted me to kind of take over a class and go over a lot of movements and, cues of coaching, stuff that I see in my everyday thing. And I said to them, guys, like, I've been doing this for 4 years. I still question how good of a coach I am right now. I'm going to be honest. And like, I know how I coach, but it honestly is taking me so many reps. And what you're going to learn from the book is from the book. But I'm going to be honest, your best bet in the practice is actually getting on the floor and having that experience and being able to get as many reps in as possible, because then you're able to really kind of tell how you can coach and how you're able to get that information out. And again, I still don't think at this juncture I'm that good at it. I'm just too obsessed with training where like it's just become my life where I'm like, okay, yeah, like this is how I'm going to do it. This is what we're going to do. I'm all in on it. But I was literally, it just makes sense. I was just saying to them, like, you're gonna have to stick to it. Like, you're not gonna become an amazing coach after 1 year. Like my first or second year in coaching was mediocre, but looking over the duration of 4 years now from where I started out, it's light years ahead of where I was. And I can only imagine what the next 4 years, 10 years, however much it's also going to grow. So I agree. Just sticking to it, got to grind it out. It's the biggest thing at the end of the day.
Keeping your finger on the pulse.
Absolutely. Ben, this was awesome, dude. Really appreciate you taking the time out of your day to hop on this. If anyone is looking to connect with you, I'll give this chance to kind of plug yourself. Where can they find you? How can they connect? All that good stuff.
Thanks again for having me, man. I'm pretty easy to find uh, on Instagram. I think the gym page is like Ben Racke Fitness and Performance. I don't know. It's on the top of it's in my bio, like on my personal page. So you can click the page if you want to check out some stuff we're doing at the gym. I kind of cross pollinate the posts. So you should kind of see everything. Yeah. If you're ever in the Northern Kentucky or Cincinnati area, reach out, like to connect with other coaches, trainers, PTs, anybody in the training and athletic performance world.
Yeah. I got to make a trip out there at some point. I know I got a lot of things going on right now, but I got to make a trip out to that
Slide through the
section.
Midwest, man.
Always, we're going to the Midwest at some point. We're making the trip out there. Guys, if you stuck this long, thank you so much for listening. Obviously, if you have not done so already, I know this is very new, please subscribe. This is going to be on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify. I'll also put all of Ben's information and handles in the show notes. Appreciate all the love this has gotten really early on. Really appreciate everything you guys have done so far and can't wait to see you guys next time. So we'll see you soon.